Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talkin Trim. I'm John Skinner and today we're looking at some fully trimmed seat base units for the Triumph TR3 and TR3A 3B models. Now this is very much a continuation video from one that I've done showing mostly information about the seat base spring units here in the background. So worth checking out the link in the description below, as there will be a link to that video as well. But we had the opportunity here as we've been trimming up some seat bases for a couple of customers, and this is often an area of mass confusion within the market, not helped by the fact that a lot of suppliers out there don't acknowledge the changes and thus supply incorrect parts for these cars. So I thought this is an ideal opportunity. Now what we've got here in what we refer to as barley beige white piping is a TR3 car, whereas these biscuit light tan covers here, they are TR3A, TR3B. The associated spring units are located behind the seats, so these are TR3A, TR3B. There were two versions of springs. They're basically the same shape, apart from one of them had a hump on the bottom of the spring, as that sat in a recess. Tended to be used on the very last versions of the 3A, 3Bs, and also when the crossover happened in the TR4s that happened to use the same seat frames as the TR3As. Whereas the TR3s, with no A or B on the end of them, they used completely different springs. They are much more square at the top there, if you look. These are rounded, whereas these are square. And thus the seat covers are also quite massively different as well. You can see the design, effectively the TR3s had a horseshoe with front to back pleats, whereas the 3As had left to right pleats with no horseshoe element on them there. So the design was very much different. Now, a bit of an area of confusion is effectively the TR2s to the TR3s changeovers. Now, unfortunately, I don't have TR2 version here, but I can describe. The seat cover looks very similar. It had the same horseshoe element design and the same front to back and top to bottom vertical pleats on it, and in fact it used the exact same spring unit and frame as well. The only major difference was the tilt element was introduced on the sort of TR3s, but the fixed element in terms of the actual framework is identical between the TR2s and the TR3s. However, the TR3As was different, and again, this is an area within the market that is really confusing, because a lot of the big companies out there that supply frames list them as TR3s and then claim they're suitable for the TR3As or vice versa, and they're not. The TR2 and TR3, the frame is very much interchangeable. However, the TR3A, the frame is different. It's a lot pointier. Do see our website for details, as we've got a little area on there that does describe that. But going back to the TR2s to TR3s, the seat cover is essentially the same in terms of its design. However, the horseshoe on the TR2s was a lot narrower. I'll show you an example. You can see in this book here with the same colour piping, which is for a TR2. It is narrower than that. And the main differences that causes is that on the TR2 seats, when you're trimming it, the piping sits very much along the ridge of the perimeter of the spring there. Whereas the TR3s, they made this horseshoe wider deliberately, and it waterfalled over the edge and went down, dipped down the front basically. Presumably, and I'm kind of guessing here, but using a bit of common sense and logic, presumably this was done to make it a bit more comfortable sat in the car, so the piping wasn't sat on the back of your knees, helped presumably with wear and tear on the piping. But either way, that change was made. It might have happened at some point in the TR2 range, but certainly the way we kind of describe it is the TR2s were fairly much straight across there with the piping, whereas the TR3s dipped down. Again, referring to other suppliers out there, we're one of the only companies, if not the only company in the world, that acknowledge the fact that there was actually a change between those seat covers. Other companies, the only change they'll offer is the colour of the piping, with the TR2s always having same colour piping originally as the main trim, whereas the TR3s switched to white on the inside and outside. Apart from that, they'll claim that the seat covers are identical. Don't get me wrong, you can get them to fit, absolutely, between the cars, because the frames are basically the same, the springs are the same, and the seat foam padding kits are also the same. So you can get them to fit in between the TR2 and TR3s, but there was a difference, and it is all related to this piping here. So just bear that in mind. Obviously, there will have been some crossovers, and we've certainly come across it before where a customer had a TR3, but it had the much straighter TR2 piping across there. So this is why we recommend that people always send us photos of their hopefully original trim. If not, it's the discussion that needs to happen of what do you want it? Do you want it how your car left the factory or how it should have left the factory? So just bear that in mind. The TR3A is obviously very much different. You can see the design was very much different in terms of the square element that was used on the earlier ones was eliminated, and it had this much more curvy section here, and the piping did sit a bit higher up on there, not quite on the ridge, but certainly not as dip down waterfall effect as the TR3, so bear that in mind. Like I say, the frames for the TR3As and TR3Bs were radically different. At a glance they look the same, and in fact the base element of them where the spring sits would pretty much be the same, barring any that had this recess in for this hump. But it's the backrest squab that really did change. I've got, like I say, an article on our website that's, see the link below, because it does illustrate that nicely. But basically the TR2 and TR3s, this was quite fat up here, whereas the TR3As, it went much pointier. I don't know if they're showing any particularly good photos here, but in all honesty, it's one of those things, it would really show the difference on if you had the frames next to each other, you would see chalk and cheese. However, to sort of glance at without taking measurements, it's quite hard to see. That being said, they're nowhere near close enough that you could interchange the seat covers. The TR3A seat covers would not fit on a TR2 and TR3 seat frame, and if you went the other way around, the TR2 and TR3 seat covers would look extremely baggy. They would almost have Mickey Mouse ears on the top of the backrest squab. So bear that in mind, and really do be careful when trying to source these seat frames and whatnot from the main wholesalers, because they really do cause confusion in the industry in that regard. We have all of the measurements here, so if you're unsure, just let us know, and of course we can guide you and help you with the fitment element of these things of our seat covers. But I thought I'd do that video because it causes so many questions and confusions. We deal with it week in, week out, with customers asking certain questions where they've tried to source certain springs, save a few quid here and there by sourcing certain springs from certain other suppliers because of the cost difference, thinking that they're effectively the same when they're not. Again, this is a thing, we make all of our springs here in the UK. A lot of the big trader wholesalers used to buy their springs from us, and then they went out east to get them a lot cheaper. And honestly, in fact, the Barley Beige covers here are a prime example. He went and bought them from one of the main wholesalers and sent them back straight away, and ended up sending us his seats so we can trim them for him, because he realised the springs were just not suitable. So sometimes you think you're saving a bit of money, but really you're not. You're causing more problems, more headaches. Just stick with the people that know and have the expertise. This is why I do this YouTube channel, to really demonstrate not just the quality and workmanship of our products, but also the depth of knowledge that we have on these things, and the willingness that we have to help everyone at every stage, pre-sale and post-sale, in terms of these things. It's not just a business to us, it's a passion. So just bear that in mind. Hope you find these videos helpful. Anyway, please check out the description below. There might be some useful information in that I've omitted from this video. Otherwise, be sure to check out the links below as well to other useful videos, and links to our website that have useful articles. Be sure to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.